While everyone else is picking through houses, kicking in the doors of convenience stores, and fighting over whatever's left on grocery shelves, there are 3.5 million semi-trucks on American roads right now. And in a collapse, most of them are going to stop exactly where they are. The driver is going to make a decision. Keep driving toward a delivery that nobody's waiting for, or abandon the rig and get home to his family. And the overwhelming majority of them are going to choose family, which means millions of 18-wheelers are going to be sitting on highways, in truck stops, on exit ramps, in warehouse parking lots, and on the shoulders of every interstate in the country, locked untouched, and containing a volume of materials that makes the average house look like a junk drawer. People don't think of semi-trucks as scavenging targets because they think of them as vehicles, and vehicles are for driving, and driving is over. But a semi-truck was never just a vehicle. It's a rolling warehouse, a mechanical system, and a raw materials depot all in one. And the truck itself, not the trailer, the truck, contains 6 things that are worth more than almost anything you'll find inside a residential building. The trailer might be full of televisions or empty cardboard boxes or something useful, and that's worth checking. But the real prize is the rig itself, the cab, and the chassis. Because those components were built to cross a continent pulling 40 tons, and the engineering that makes that possible translates into survival materials at a scale and quality that nothing in a house can match. A standard semi-truck has 2 diesel tanks, one on each side of the chassis with a combined capacity of 200 to 300 gallons. Even a truck that was running low when the driver abandoned it likely has 50 to 100 gallons remaining. And many that were abandoned early in a collapse, parked at a truck stop, or pulled over when traffic ceased, may have full or near full tanks. Diesel fuel has a shelf life of 12 to 18 months without treatment, and even longer with a basic stabilizer, which means the fuel in an abandoned semi is usable for well over a year after the collapse begins. 200 gallons of diesel is an almost incomprehensible energy reserve in a post-collapse context. It runs generators. A mid-sized diesel generator consuming 1 gallon per hour gives you 200 hours of electrical power from a single truck's tanks, enough to run medical equipment, refrigerate medicine, power communication systems, and charge batteries for months if you manage it carefully. It runs vehicles. Any diesel car, truck, or heavy equipment that's still functional can be fueled from your reserve. It runs heaters. A diesel-fired space heater can keep a shelter warm through an entire winter on a fraction of what one truck contains. And diesel, unlike gasoline, is relatively stable and safe to store. It doesn't produce explosive vapors at room temperature. It doesn't degrade as quickly. And it can be siphoned, transported, and cached in any reasonably sealed container without the volatility risks that make gasoline storage dangerous. A single semi-truck's fuel tanks contain more usable energy than every battery, every propane cylinder, and every can of gasoline in an entire suburban block combined. And there are dozens of abandoned semis within a few miles of almost any location in the country. A semi-truck doesn't run on one car battery. It runs on a bank of 2 to 4 heavy-duty commercial batteries, each one roughly 3 to 4 times the capacity of a standard car battery. These are deep cycle or dual-purpose batteries designed to crank a massive diesel engine in sub-zero temperatures and power the truck's electrical systems during overnight rest periods when the engine is off. A typical semi-battery bank contains 200 to 400 amp hours of storage capacity at 12 volts, which is enough electrical energy to run LED lighting, charge devices, power a radio, and operate small medical equipment for days on a single charge. But the real value is that semi-batteries are built for abuse that would destroy a car battery in weeks. They're designed to be discharged and recharged thousands of times to operate in extreme temperatures and to deliver high current on demand without failing. In a collapse where you're cobbling together a solar charging system from scavenged panels and need a battery bank that can handle irregular charging cycles without dying, semi-truck batteries are the gold standard. They'll outlast and outperform any other battery source you're likely to find. Wire the batteries in parallel, and you have a 12-volt power station with enormous storage capacity. Wire them in series, and you have a 24 or 48-volt system for running larger equipment. Either way, one semi-truck's battery bank replaces a wall of car batteries that you'd have to scavenge from a dozen vehicles. And it does so with batteries that are specifically engineered for the kind of imperfect, inconsistent charging that any improvised power system will provide. Semi-trucks use compressed air to operate their braking system, and the infrastructure that produces, stores, and distributes that air is a ready-made pneumatic toolkit that has survival applications most people can't even imagine until they see the components laid out. The compressor, a belt-driven or gear-driven air pump mounted on the engine, is a device that takes atmospheric air and pressurizes it to 120 lb per square inch or higher. Disconnected from the engine and driven by any rotational power source, a hand crank, a bicycle wheel, a water wheel, even a second engine from a smaller vehicle. This compressor fills air tanks that can power pneumatic tools, inflate tires, operate improvised air-driven systems, and provide pressurized air for any application where you need force delivered through a hose. The air tanks themselves are steel pressure vessels rated for 150 lb per square inch or higher, and they're built to safety standards that make them virtually indestructible under normal use. These tanks can store compressed air for weeks without leaking, and a truck typically has 2 to 4 of them, holding several cubic feet of compressed air each. As standalone storage vessels, they're superior to any container you'll find in a house for storing water under pressure, keeping liquid sealed and protected, or serving as the reservoir for any compressed air system you build. The air lines, the nylon tubing and steel fittings connecting the system, are pressure-rated flexible tubing with quick connect fittings that can be repurposed as water lines, fuel transfer lines, or pneumatic supply lines for any improvised system. The fittings are brass or steel, threaded and sealed, reusable and compatible with standard hardware. A complete semi-truck air brake system, disassembled and organized, is essentially a plumbing and pneumatic supply store contained in a single vehicle. A standard semi-tire is roughly 40 inches in diameter, 11 inches wide, and contains approximately 20 to 25 lbs of steel belt wire, thick rubber tread built to survive 500,000 miles of highway abuse, and a volume of material that dwarfs a car tire by a factor of 3 or 4. One semi-tire contains enough tread rubber to sole 15 to 20 pairs of indestructible sandals. The steel belt wire extracted from a single tire provides enough high-tensile wire for dozens of snares, hundreds of feet of binding material, and enough raw steel for a significant tool-making operation. The sidewall rubber, which is thicker and more rigid than car tire sidewall, can be cut into water basins large enough to hold 10 or more gallons each, or used as heavy-duty gasket material, impact-resistant shielding, or ground insulation for sleeping areas. An 18-wheeler has 18 tires. That's 18 units of the most durable raw material in the scavenging environment, each one containing more usable material than 4 car tires combined, all sitting on a single vehicle that most people are walking past because they are thinking about what's inside the trailer instead of what the truck itself is made of. Long-haul truckers live in their cabs for days or weeks at a time, and the cab of an abandoned semi-truck reflects that. It's a mobile living space stocked with personal supplies and professional tools that the driver may or may not have taken with them when they left. The standard toolkit that most truckers carry includes a full set of wrenches, socket sets, screwdrivers, pliers, wire cutters, a tire iron, a pry bar, and often a hammer, a hacksaw, and jumper cables. These aren't consumer-grade household tools. They're commercial duty tools sized for working on a vehicle where the smallest bolt is bigger than anything in your car. Beyond tools, the cab often contains a mattress in the sleeper berth, a full-size sleeping surface that can be removed and used as insulation, bedding, or cushioning. There are often blankets, pillows, clothing, food, bottled water, a CB radio that works without cell towers, flashlights, a first aid kit, and personal items that range from useful to invaluable, depending on the driver's habits. Some cabs have inverters that convert 12-volt battery power to 120-volt AC, which means you can plug in household devices and run them from the truck's battery bank. Some have auxiliary power units, small generators built into the truck for running the cab's climate control during rest stops that are independent power sources in themselves. The cab of a semi-truck that was abandoned by a long-haul driver is in many cases a fully equipped mobile shelter containing tools, power, bedding, food, water, communication equipment, and first aid supplies in a single locked box that most scavengers will ignore because they walk straight to the trailer without checking where the driver actually lived. The fifth wheel coupling, the massive horseshoe-shaped steel plate on top of the chassis where the trailer connects, is a single piece of machined hardened steel weighing 100 to 200 lb, designed to bear the vertical load of a fully loaded trailer and the rotational stress of turning while carrying 40 tons. It is one of the most overbuilt steel components on the entire vehicle, and when removed from the chassis, it becomes a piece of tool-grade steel that a blacksmith would consider a significant find. But the fifth wheel is just the beginning. The chassis frame itself is constructed from C-channel steel. Long, thick rails of structural steel running the entire length of the truck, typically 30 to 35 ft long, 8 to 12 inches deep, and a quarter to 3/8 of an inch thick. This is the same grade of structural steel used in building construction and bridge work, and a single semi-truck chassis contains enough of it to build gate hardware, door reinforcements, window barriers, elevated platforms, defensive structures, tool stock for years of blacksmithing, and enough structural steel to reinforce an entire building's entry points against forced entry. The cross members connecting the two frame rails are additional pieces of heavy steel that can be cut free with a hacksaw or an angle grinder and used as pry bars, lever arms, anchor stakes, or any application requiring a solid steel beam that won't bend under load. The spring packs from the suspension, stacked leaves of high-carbon spring steel, are some of the best knife-making material that exists. Valued by bladesmiths for their hardness, their ability to hold an edge, and their availability in flat stock that's already the right thickness for blade work. Here's what a single abandoned semi-truck gives you. Up to 300 gallons of stable, versatile diesel fuel that powers generators, vehicles, and heaters for months. A battery bank with more storage capacity than a dozen car batteries combined. A complete pneumatic system, including a compressor, pressure-rated tanks, and a network of fittings and lines. 18 massive tires containing more raw rubber and steel than you could scavenge from 50 cars. A cab full of commercial tools, bedding, supplies, and possibly an independent power unit. And a chassis made of structural steel that would take weeks to accumulate from any other source. All of it sitting on the shoulder of the interstate in a vehicle that weighs 15,000 to 20,000 lb empty, and that every other survivor is walking past on their way to loot the gas station a quarter mile down the road. The gas station has been empty since day 2. The semi-truck has been sitting there untouched since day 1, and it contains more usable material than the gas station, the house next to it, and the convenience store across the street put together. The people who figure this out early will have fuel, power, tools, rubber, steel, and compressed air, while everyone else is still picking through kitchen drawers and medicine cabinets looking for scraps. Don't walk past the truck. The truck is the jackpot that everyone else left on the side of the road because it doesn't have a sign on the front that says survival supplies inside. It doesn't need one. Now you know what's in there. If this breakdown changed the way you look at the abandoned resources on our roads, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the survival secrets that others have tried to ignore. Prepare for the future. The next treasure of knowledge will be revealed soon,